On today's Two on Your Side Town Hall, the supply chain nightmares drag on for companies and consumers. We're going to spend some time with a top expert who will answer your questions about all of the shortages at the grocery store, the car lot, and about everywhere else.
Plus, we're laying out the facts in the salmonella outbreak that's gotten hundreds of people sick, and it's all linked to onions.
And do you have a big tree that you want to donate? Because some folks are on the hunt right now looking for the centerpiece of a big holiday celebration.
We are glad you're with us, everybody. Every day we get a new reminder that the supply chain has not recovered from the pandemic, from higher costs to longer waits to flat out not being able to find what you want to buy.
Yeah, just about everyone here watching right now is affected by this in some way based on the headlines that are really going around this week. They're all over the place. In just the last few days, we've seen warnings about food shortages at the grocery store with, among other things, juice boxes being specifically harder to find. CNBC put out a story warning that the response to the crisis, retailers, manufacturers over-ordering things, is actually making it worse because there is less available for everything else.
And then you've got a looming shortage of magnesium. Sound unimportant? Well, it turns out you really need it to make cars. And as anyone who's had to do a big home project lately knows, building materials are still making that really expensive as well. So joining us live tonight to talk about all this is Patrick Penfield, professor of supply chain practice at Syracuse University School of Management, and we might add a Western New Yorker himself. So thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
We could probably do our entire 2.5-hour news block this evening talking about all the supply chain issues. We want to get to some of the top headlines right now and take advantage of your expertise. And starting with food, because there are a lot of empty spaces on the grocery store shelves right now. You see the signs apologizing to customers that they don't always have everything in stock. What is behind that right now, and is there concern that this could get worse?
Yeah, we seem to have disruptions throughout the supply chain, specifically with food. So the plan, the make, the source, the deliver, each one of those aspects of the supply chain has had some type of disruption. So this is what we're seeing. So the problem is we're seeing a lack of ingredients. We're seeing truck driver shortage. We're seeing people not coming to work from a production standpoint. So all of that is just compounding things in addition to the increased demand. So we're eating more at home, and so it's causing a lot of issues and lots of problems for these for the supermarkets and food production companies.
Yeah, it's been kind of like a snowball going downhill these last few months, but a few publications have specifically mentioned juice boxes as an issue. And we know locally at Tops they put a limit on how many you can buy. And why is that, of all things? I mean, love a juice box, but why is that something that's just so hard to find right now?
I know, so your viewers are probably saying there's apples on the trees and I just picked some, and why would that be the case? Well, the problem is there's not enough concentrate. So the apple concentrate and the pear concentrate, and that all has to do with production. So the facilities that make this stuff, they have a lack of people, vacancies, people impacted with COVID. In addition to that, they're having a hard time actually transporting what they make to the juice box makers. In addition, there's some packaging problems. So straws, for example. And this is the unfortunate thing. So as a global country, and this is a global supply chain, we purchase a lot from China. So they're our number one supplier here in the world. So, if you can't get straws from China, it's really difficult to be able to supply those juice boxes.
It really kind of shows all of us how small the world really is when it comes to all of this. And by the way, Kate is not hiding all the juice boxes under the desk. I just looked there.
Promise.
Yeah. CNBC's headline that we mentioned earlier suggested that retailers and manufacturers are also essentially kind of panic buying right now. They're ordering too much too early, and that may be making things worse. When I heard that today, I kind of sort of thought back to early on in the pandemic. We had products like toilet paper that were in high demand, and it was consumers who were doing the panic buying. Now it seems like it's at a different point in the process. Is that a trend that you've seen and heard about it? And what is the fix to that to try to get them to stop with the panic buying?
Yeah, unfortunately, this actually started in the summer. So the grocery stores were doing this. So they were buying paper products, they were buying non-perishable foods, they were buying frozen foods, and it was all done because they wanted to get ahead of the next price increase. So they're trying to protect their margins. And so this is kind of escalated with other manufacturers and retailers. And the big issue is that they can't get supply, right? So when your boss is on your back saying, hey, we need these products in, the tendency is to over order, and that's what we're seeing in the supply chain. And you're absolutely correct. This is causing some major issues, and it's causing more stuff to be constrained within the supply chain.
Yeah, they're having to make these decisions to be able to deliver to customers, and it's kind of making things more difficult ultimately. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot here on the town hall are car shortages in the context of the lack of microchips, making it harder to build new vehicles with all of the built-in computers now. But now there's a focus on magnesium. What is that all about?
Yeah, so magnesium is a key ingredient to make aluminum alloy. So aluminum is used throughout a car. It's used on the body of the car, and it's used on the components within the car. So 85% of that comes from China. And so unfortunately, China right now is going through an energy crunch. So they're having energy issues. They don't have enough energy to sustain the factories that are making this magnesium. So what they've done is they've shut down some of these factories, and so now we're starting to see this issue where there's not enough supply. So magnesium has a short shelf life, so it's perishable. So you can't make it in advance, and so this is the unfortunate thing that's going on. The good thing is that in the United States we can make magnesium. The problem is it's more costly than what we can buy from as far as China goes. So that's why China produces 85% of the world's magnesium.
Interesting. I have heard from, some dealers here locally that maybe the car shortage is getting a little bit better, magnesium aside, but at least the microchip parts are getting a little bit better than they were before. We'll see. Another CNBC article that we mentioned pointed out that new home construction is finally recovering. It's in spite of the fact that building materials are still pretty hard to come by and still pretty expensive. I wonder, what would be your advice to somebody looking at either building a new home right now or maybe just doing some of those projects around the house, but they need those supplies? Is that improving enough that you kind of wait it out a little bit, or what do you think?
To be quite honest with you, if I living in Western New York, being from Western New York, I would go ahead with my projects. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some issues. We saw lumber prices, skyrocket, and then they've come down, which is good. There is definitely shortages with construction. The big issue right now is the labor and energy prices, and so that's causing a lot of problems with construction. And so this is part of it in addition to some of the shortages. But I think being, from Western New York, living in Western New York, I think I would go ahead and pursue those projects because I think you'll have enough supply in order to get things done. Maybe a little more costlier, but at least you'll be able to complete your projects.
There's a little bit of good news there because I feel like every time we have this conversation, we always want to ask, when could there be some relief with all of this? And we know the White House announced earlier this month that the Port of Los Angeles would go 24/7 because of the big backup there. It's related to a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about here. And some big retailers said that they'd add new resources with the same goal. So how long do you think it will be until we start to see the impact of those changes, and how significant maybe could the impact be?
Well, I hate to say this, but I think you really won't see things calm down till probably the middle of 2022. That's if there's no more variants and there's no more disruptions, from a global standpoint. If we can get the pandemic under control, then I think the supply chain will follow. But if we have another spike, another variant, then we could be in this situation again next year.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's really hard to predict the future, but we appreciate all of your insight. We threw everything at you during this segment. These are the questions that we're getting from our viewers and what people are talking about, so we really appreciate it. Patrick Penfield is a professor of supply chain practice at Syracuse University School of Management. Thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome, and let's go Bills, and this is our year for the Super Bowl.
Go Bills.
All right, there we go. We hope you'll come back too, Patrick. Thank you. And we mentioned microchips there, and that's a topic that they're tackling tonight on NBC Nightly News. COVID exposed just how far behind U.S. manufacturing is when it comes to making microchips.
NBC News' Jacob Ward got rare access inside a new $10 billion semiconductor facility right here in the U.S. It's a start, but the head of Intel told Jacob that the U.S. needs a lot more investment to catch up on this chip making.
There's a tension between your responsibility to your shareholders as a public company and what is becoming increasingly clear is your sort of role as really the best hope we have for a domestic chip industry. How do we balance these two things?
Well, this is part of our objective in the CHIPS Act and some of the policy statements that are in flight right now is help us build more faster on American soil. And ultimately what's happened, we're short of capacity. I want to build more.
On ABC Nightly News, you may be surprised to find out just how long the chip shortage could last, and they'll look at the impact that you'll see on some products like cars that people are still trying to buy.
And this is a conversation you and I had not too long ago, that we were talking about how long it would be, and then it was going to be a little longer and a little longer, and it has been going on for, I think, a lot longer than we anticipated.
And to hear the professor say middle of next year,
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a long ways up. And then there are so many unknowns. I mean, you think that the car shortage is getting a little better, and along comes magnesium.
Right, there's always something.
Yeah, things we can't even predict.
For sure.